The chief rabble-rousers in the state is here tonight. This ought to be a good one.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Take Up Comfort Solutions.
The state Republican Party Chairman Brandon Bell has certainly been, in his role in the last couple of years, more active, more vocal, more aggressive, more tactical than any other Republican Party chairman has. And for the most part, I grade him in the approval range. We have a couple of disagreements on some things, and we'll get after that tonight, but there's no doubt that an energized, at least voice from the state Republican Party is something that is desperately needed. I'm not so sure we get it at the State House anymore exactly the way we used to, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. But why don't we start, and by the way, you should know on the Friday programs we record on Thursdays in case all heck broke loose on Friday. We'll catch up on Monday. But let's talk about the national scene here for just a second. The health care bill, and again, at our post-time, press time for the show yesterday was kind of a, I don't know, amongst the troops down in Washington with the pressure seemingly on to get a Senate bill up and voted by next week. Donald Trump weighs in, of course.
If we went and got the single greatest health care plan in the history of the world, we would not get one Democrat vote because they're obstructionists.
Of course, Donald Trump was running, Rose Garden ceremonies with the House Republicans, and then he turns around 4 weeks later and tells the Senate that the bill that they passed was mean. So I don't know how you trust a word of what the president has to say. Of course, the Senate president's all over this thing.
Because Obamacare is a direct attack on the middle class, and American families deserve better than its failing status quo.
Of course, we call him the majority leader in Washington, and of course, our junior senator, Sheldon Whitehouse, weighs in.
When you've got these stories from Rhode Island and from all the other states around the country, when you've got real fellow Americans counting on the health care that the Affordable Care Act made possible, the idea that you throw that out to score political points and to give super rich people a tax break is disgraceful.
All right, so just some of the voices on this thing. Brandon Bell is with us. You were late. Welcome, by the way. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
You were late to the Trump train. You boarded it and have, I don't know. I think you've gone through the motions. I mean, inside, you really know this guy is trouble, right?
Nope. He's.
I mean, listen. By the way, this is television. Not like radio, where you can kind of go, nope, and look and sound contemplative.
Lexi, put that camera on me right now.
Tell
the American people
that's
how I feel.
that's Lexi. But the truth of the matter is that you just kind of went.
No. Hey, there were 17 people on stage, and I certainly had an interest in more than one. And in the end, there's one left standing. I went to the Republican convention as a Trump delegate, by the way. That's not automatic. We're not like the Democrats with super delegates and special delegates and political patronage delegates. It's by election in our state, overwhelmingly 64.5%. I remind the boss that we gave him the biggest margin of victory in terms of numbers and percentage, 64.5% between him, Cruz, and Kasich. I supported him from the day he won the primary. I think that he's had a rough start. I'm not going to sit here and look in the eye and say that it has been rough, but I think he's also gotten some stuff done, and he's doing what he said he was going to do. He's campaigning. It's not campaigning in poetry and governing in prose.
Yeah, so anyway, the health care bill, whatever.
It's Friday, right?
The health care bill is a real challenge. The House put this thing together, and the commander-in-chief dismissed it when he got into the Senate. So you find the urgency to get a bill passed next week? I don't understand the logic. I really don't. I mean, the same complaint that the Republicans have for Democrats in shoving something through without reading it well is now going to be delivered right to the Washington Republicans. I don't understand what the thinking is.
I think the thinking as we see it is and as anyone can read any of these papers is to get this done before tax reform, and getting tax reform done this year, as Speaker Ryan mentioned, is one of the most important priorities besides the repeal and replacement of Obamacare. I think the reason that it's so urgent can even be looked at from the last couple days. I mean, you have the biggest insurance companies in some of these Midwest states are pulling out. Obamacare is imploding, and people might not see it in Rhode Island as they see it. We've only had a couple choices, if that, here anyway. But in other states, there are no choices, and that's what this is all about: choice. So I think I see the urgency. I'm not really sure that I agree with 10 senators in a room and then letting the rest of them know. I know there's a lot of debate about that. I know there was a lot of debate about getting it through the House, as close as that vote was. So I think that we just need to wait and see. I haven't reviewed what the Senate bill is. I'm sure it's.
I think the politics of this thing is, in the name Obama, has corrupted fair debate on what no doubt needs to be improvement in our healthcare system. If we didn't call it Obamacare, there wouldn't be an urgency to strip, to repeal and replace, which was the campaign politics and still the politics of today.
But I go one step further with the Affordable Health Care Act. Even under that name alone, it's not truthful because it's not affordable. In many states, in fact, it's unaffordable. Premiums doubled, and President Obama is the one that looked the American people in the eye and said that's not going to happen. So I think that take Obamacare out of it. I remember Mitt Romney in 2012 saying, "Can I call it Obamacare?"
Not all premiums doubled. Not all premiums.
No, not all premiums doubled. I agree. But I look at states like Ohio and some states like that where it's you see these stories. Again, it's not as prevalent here because we really haven't had much choice here, and the exchange and everything that's happened here. So I have to study it myself. There's 9 days, I believe, before they're going to debate it on the floor. Yeah. I see that they're doing that now, though.
My guess is it's not going to get done before the 4th of July, and they ought to just kind of chill and come back in the fall and figure it out. Anyway, the climate down there is crazy. There's a lot of percolating impeachment chatter around the country. It seems to me that what we have evidence right now isn't enough for that kind of a thing. But this president just keeps feeding the beast, man. He just keeps. I think he loves the turbulence to the level that he's going to cause himself his demise.
I don't know about demise. I think that the sky falling during his presidency. I think the sky falling during his presidency and the impeachment word has been thrown around a little bit too loosely. He's got a different style, clearly. I know that's an understatement of the year. It's a different style. The tweeting is. I'm not a huge fan of the nature in which the way he tweets. Although sometimes that message gets right to the American people quicker, and it's covered by everybody. What his tweets actually are. I think at the end of the day, this Russian stuff is, look, they meddled with our elections. There's no doubt about it.
All he's got to do is say it.
But
why didn't he just say it once, and the pressure and the steam would come out of the engine? He won't say it because his big fat ego refuses to be able to let go of the concept that he was duly elected. But there was meddling. Why can't he split that atom? Everybody else can.
But either way, you're still going to have the Senator White Houses of the world and many others not in the position of power that Senator White House is in, saying that he colluded and that he obstructed and all these other things happened. So I realize that these things all sort of.
I don't know the White House has suggested that he's colluded. He suggested that the evidence needs to be followed. White House hasn't said he colluded. Nobody has said he colluded.
I have to look at that. I mean, I think that after listening to Comey, after listening to Sessions in the last couple of weeks, and listening really carefully, I just think that there is still no evidence of obstruction of justice. There's no evidence of collusion, and I just take it from someone who's clearly on the other side.
Well,
Alan Dershowitz.
The collusion of the campaign is not proven by any stretch at this point. But the obstruction of justice evidence, or at least reasonable trail to investigate it, comes literally with the termination of Comey and what he had to say to Comey, and clearly that's a trail toward at least an analysis of obstruction of justice. And again, that's a self-inflicted wound.
Right, but I think that most Americans don't understand the definition of obstruction of justice. And again, I would advise them, watch Alan Dershowitz. If you're going to trust anybody, watch a legal scholar of that caliber. From the liberal side, he hates Trump, but he said, look, I hope that the Flynn investigation will cease. I hope. Words like that do not show intent to obstruct justice. And it's just not enough. You can't make something out of nothing. And all this testimony is out. I don't know what else what they're gonna get out of it. And it's just time to move on. And I think that once he starts governing, and he's done a pretty good job at the governing side, but this is just this big, it's a big obstruction. They're obstructionists.
Right. It's a very circular conversation. So when we come back, we'll do it in Rhode Island. It's a little bit more concrete, a little bit more fertile ground. Stay with us. Welcome back in with Brandon Bell, the State Republican Party Chairman. The Rhode Island budget is hard to analyze because this is Friday. They started last night. They're supposed to be out by 10 o'clock. You know, on any night that they're debating the budget, we'll be able to check up on Monday regarding that. But in principle, you know, I've been kind of critical and was with Patricia Morgan last night and on the radio about some of the ways the Republicans are going about their business. There's a 4-point plan the Republicans have for priorities in spending that I think is pretty sound. But, you know, showing up in large part days before the actual acute budget presentation and deliberation with a principled objection and with 4 points that need, you know, real vetting, it's kind of like the party seems to be repeating the cycle of smart thinking, token effort. Smart thinking, token effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think this budget stinks. I think the problem is and again, Patricia and the caucus's 4-point plan is really sound. I agree. They're
you know, pension, you know, disability pension, prevailing wage. We had it on a thing. Just I don't know if you have it still. Tangible personal property elimination, establishment of the Inspector General. All those things. I mean, I think they're all independently and collectively very sound, constructive ideas. I find it disappointing that they show up, you know, days before the session's coming to a climax, and there's no traction for the public to get behind these things, even as a single item or a package.
Well, we need a game changer, and some of these things could be game changers. This budget is a bloated, bogus budget. The one that
if you need a game changer, you establish it in the winter time.
That's right.
And you make it a big deal.
But the thing is that we don't have somebody up on the 3rd floor who's able to get these ideas in the right places, and I think that's problematic. I mean, I have a theory that we send the entire legislature home and bring them in on May 30th, June 1st, because all we need is a month, right? Because nothing really got done this year. What got done between January and May? Really not much. You could pick 4 bills were signed into law, I believe. If I'm not mistaken.
I think the Speaker was spending a whole lot more time on trying to figure out how to make good on his promise to reduce the car tax that you know, that he inserted as kind of a lifesaver in his District 15 race.
Absolutely.
Seriously, I think there was a lot of work being done on trying to manufacture a car tax repeal that made some sustainable sense, even if it doesn't last the entire 6 years.
Well, but that's the problem. It's like, okay, so we were talking about the health care bill earlier. Let's talk about that. And nobody knew anything about what he was actually doing. He was only saying it'll be a 5-year plan at the time, $40 million a year, and by year 6, $221 million tax cut, when a year ago we couldn't find $1 to fix the roads and the bridges without tolling. So now you've got a 6-year plan, you had $26 million this year. It's completely irresponsible, while I'm totally supportive of the car tax elimination, by the way, but it's completely irresponsible because unspecified cuts are going to pay for that. There's no permanent spending cuts, and without permanent spending cuts, we are going to be in a hole. This is a deficit budget.
Well, we have a hole right now, and they're scooping. And things like, you know, $12.5 million in bills that we pay to National Grid for specific environmental use are being scooped, so how come we don't get that money back? We're going to be talking about that today. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
And the electric bill will go up, and the sewer bills will go up, the $5 million from Narragansett Bay. These are, it's a bait and switch. You can't say, hey, you were paying all this time. The DMV fees, that's the perfect example. The DMV fees, they were supposed to fix our potholes, but now they're plugging the budget hole.
Well, I think what's interesting is that the governor had the 2 years free college tuition thing as her one and done, and the Speaker had his car tax as his one and done. And there wasn't much work getting done between those two concepts. And the governor ends up with at least the proposed only CCRI and calls it a win. No, she got her head handed to her in this particular case. The Speaker, of course, holds all the cards and tries to get the car tax thing done. But all I'm saying is that, you know, there are some good things in the budget, there always is. But what I'm saying is the Republican opposition seems to be smart but flailing, not organized. It seems to be one issue driven or controversy driven rather than sustained argument when it comes to financial spending. And I just think you guys need a better organizational plan. However, opposition to the car tolls, I think, has been one of the Republicans' success stories here. But I tried to explain this to Patty Morgan last night. I don't think she's getting it. They've done a great job of analyzing what I think the false numbers are with the car toll program. But we now have a new game of chicken that has developed because the governor and the speaker promised that they'd only put up a handful, even a couple of tolls, wait to get sued by the Truckers Association, who promised litigation, and then see how it comes out. And if we lose, we'll wipe the toll, we'll forget the toll gantries and we'll go to another plan. Well, now the rope-a-dope has been played by the truckers, and they say, you know what, put them all up until we sue. We'll sue them, we damn well please. And so now, I would think that the leadership vacuum that the Republicans need to be filling is calling the governor out on the promises only to put up a couple to wait for the litigation result. And it seems to me that she's now in a position where she's got to decide whether to play chicken with 17 gantries. Because if they lose on the discrimination thing on the truckers, you know that your car and mine are going to get told in 10 seconds after that.
Absolutely.
So what are you guys doing to put that pressure on the governor right now to force, and the speaker, who, by the way, was also in the same boat, one-on-one conversations with me, same story. You guys haven't been on that. That's the pressure cooker you guys ought to be applying right now.
I'm of the opinion, and I've expressed this opinion to the truckers, that the suit should be filed immediately.
Well, they're not gonna.
And again, they're not going to.
So you can't tell them what to do.
So you can't
and in fact, I understand why they're not doing it.
I get it.
Because they got a national agenda they're trying to protect now.
And I get that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, I think that, first of all, the governor, particularly after her ideas got gutted in this budget, I think she's very weak right now, right? So I think that what we need to do is just apply the pressure, and again, to both the leadership in both chambers as well as the governor's office, to put up those gantries. We obviously need to increase our numbers and do other things in order to have some of these ideas and be more organized in the future. But between now and 2018 elections, we need to keep that pressure on to try to get these gantries put up.
That's not
There's
my point. We need to scream at her. Don't play chicken with our taxpayer money. Do not put them up, because they're not going to sue you on your timetable.
Right.
They're not going to sue you. You only wanted to put a couple or three up, see if you get sued and win. They're not going to sue you. So don't take the bait and put 17 up and get hammered and then say, well, we just spent $60 million, and so, you know what, we got to toll everybody. Well, so that's my point. And you guys have driven the argument to a very, very competent level. Now you've got to call her out on this decision. The game has changed because the suit's not going to be levied.
Well, my response to that is that they can file suit. The governor could file suit. And essentially,
suit against who?
They could file suit for a declaratory judgment as to whether or not these tolls are legitimate. They could be the plaintiff. They don't have. Sometimes it's a race to the courthouse anyway to ask the court whether or not it's appropriate under, whether there is any discrimination. And then, of course, then everybody comes to the courthouse.
They've shown no indication that they want to get that answer.
Right, but if they now know that it's the other way around, and again, this is just a suggestion that popping off the top of my head right now, but that if there's 17 of them that are going to be put up, and that there's going to be this problem because they may lose a lawsuit.
So you want them to go to a judge with and become the fake plaintiff and suggest, that's an interesting legal strategy.
No,
what the hell are you talking about?
I'll tell you what.
Your Honor, we think we're going to get sued someday, so could you give us a declaratory judgment on whether or not this is a constitutional play? No judge is going to take that bait. The judge is going to want to see a legitimate litigation, not offer consultation to the state of Rhode Island.
It's not consultation. It's an advisory opinion, but it becomes a real lawsuit when the gantry is being put up. So even if in that process they have to erect a gantry, it's not very hard to do. There's one sitting waiting to be erected that's already built.
Okay, you know what? We'll have to figure this out. If I could ever schedule them on the radio, we'll have more time to talk this thing through. When we come back, there's some behavior at the State House that's caught all of our attention. We'll talk about it next.
You can understand why that might rub people the wrong way. You're not working there anymore.
Again, it may or may not, but again, it's a benefit afforded to me as a Rhode Island College employee as well as all other employees in the higher ed system.
No, Frank Montanaro Jr. Just last night decided, in response to this Target 12 investigation, on the tuition that he was getting for his child and a guardian child over a 3-year period of time, with his leave to protect status as he moved from Rhode Island College to the JCLS, doubled the salary and all that kind of stuff. He finally came up a little bit of your pressure. I think that your reach out to the higher education officials for clarity on this, put some heat on. But some paperwork that comes out of this whole thing in the latest part of the investigation, where he might have checked off the wrong boxes, caused him to say, I'm going to repay the tuition. Give me a quick 30 on this.
He's a political heavyweight. He's not just an employee who was brought over from Rick. He's the Speaker's top aide. He needs to go. He needs to resign. He needs to be fired. We've been saying that from the beginning, and pay the money back, by the way. This is a guy who gamed the system, got caught.
You don't think the money being paid back is enough?
Not at all. He's handling a $42 million. He's in charge of a $42 million budget. We all know that's really the Speaker, but he's head of JCLS. This is a horrible example to keep him on, and somehow, some way, I don't really get it, how everything that's happened at the State House the last couple of years is connected to the Speaker.
Well, here's the governor's reaction. We got a full screen on this. She was asked this morning by Eyewitness News what her thought on this, and she said, oh, absolutely not. I've never talked to him about any of this, meaning she had no conversations, although the governor was talking about special interests, and special interests don't upset us, you know, hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, all of that kind of thing. The governor couldn't say anything about this, and now all of a sudden she says, oh, this is the right thing to do. I got to think more about whether he ought to resign. The idea that he's got to pay the restitution may be preemptive to try to ward off any other problems here. Having made this mistake, does it thwart your ability to lead and or deserve that position? You say yes.
I say absolutely. He was not entitled to the benefit. There is no argument that anybody could make here to say that he checked off that he was on leave to protect or on any kind of leave at one time, and then the next 6 or 7 times he checks no. There's intent. I think this borders criminal activity. In fact, it probably is, but I'm not going to adjudicate that right now. I'd say that as a political heavyweight, as you know, being the top aide, it's a horrible. What he did is really, really bad. You can't lead effectively. There's no moral high ground here.
There's no leading in the JCLS. It's just it's an operational job.
It's a $156,000 a year job.
True.
It needs to go back to Rick. And we need to find out who at Rick, you know, whether there's been an exertion of political influence. You know, what made Montanaro make this decision.
All right, quickly, are you going to force the issue by asking anybody to get involved in this?
Yes.
Other than higher ed, what else?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, first we're asking higher ed for all of the Rick documents. Rick is still declining to give the documents.
What else?
And we're going to push the issue. We're going to find out who, in fact, was involved.
Well, you're not investigators. Who are you going to ask to? Are you asking a formal investigation to be brought by anybody?
We already did that with the Board of Post-Secondary Education, and then on top of that, we're hoping that they refer to the state police. And if the AG is anywhere to be found, we may ask him as well.
All right. Stay tuned. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Dave.
Final word when we come back. I got to think about that notion of further investigation on Mr. Montanaro. It's something to contemplate, no doubt. We'll see you on the radio 3 o'clock on Monday, and have a good weekend. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it so much. Good night.